PragerUghh. Hey, what's poppin'? It's your boy BreadPilled Black here, and yeah. So, I watched this video. There isn't much of an argument here, and that's being generous. I will try my hardest to debunk her feelings because as the norm of PragerUghh, most of what their video says is not facts, just feelings. Anyway, let's begin with the fuckery of PragerUgh's somewhat noise video, what I can teach you about racism. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Now, let's get it.
Let me tell you how my story ends. I become a tenured, award-winning professor of political science at an Ivy League university and then at one of the leading universities in the South. Now let me tell you how my story begins. I grew up in rural Virginia, literally dirt poor. I dropped out of school in the 8th grade and had 3 children by the time I'm 20. I consider myself to be a reasonably modest person, but even I have to admit that's quite a journey.
Let's see who she is. Good for her, I guess. She's going to start this video by diverging her past and using her life experiences to say why racism isn't as bad as people make it is. Isn't she? It's PragerUghh. That's the only reason why they ever have black people on here.
How did I do it? I worked hard. Not crazy 24/7 hard, just hard. I made good decisions. Not brilliant 3-dimensional chess decisions, just good ones. I met people along the way who helped me and sincerely wanted to see me succeed. Not because they had something to gain, but because they were decent people. Almost all of these individuals, by the way, were white.
Aight, so boom. She essentially said, in her yes massa pick me way, is that she got to where she was because she worked hard, made good decisions, and met wonderful white people who wanted her to succeed. The Brookings Institute did a paper often quoted by Ben Shapiro.
Here's the rule to get out of poverty. It has nothing to do with race. It has to do with behavior. There are actually 3 rules. You want to get out of poverty? You don't want to live in permanent poverty? You only have to do 3 simple things. Get married before you have babies, finish high school, get a job.
And they say what she essentially did. Surprise, but not really a surprise. Many of those people remain poor. The disparity is even worse when you are black. Why did she have to mention that they were white? Because that's the audience of people who primarily watch PragerUghh, and her saying that validates them, when they are the ones being nice to the ones they deem good.
But mostly, I think I was blessed in one crucial way. I was born in America, a true land of opportunity for anyone of any color or background. In this country, where you start your life does not determine where you end up. That works in both directions, by the way. You can start out with every advantage and waste them all. Or you can start out with nothing and become a success. It all depends on you.
You know, I can explain how capitalism as a system is oppressive as fuck, and it is why many people fail in life. That requires its own video. Conservatives love to push that you can lift yourself by the bootstrap, and hard work in America is all that matters. When in reality, for the most people, that isn't true. America isn't a meritocracy. Then there's the American exceptionalism I mentioned earlier. I got something for that ass though, and it's the Great Gatsby curve. If you're unfamiliar with the Great Gatsby curve, it is defined by Alan Kruger, chairman of the Economic Advisors Council.
The Great Gatsby curve illustrates the connection between concentration of wealth in one generation and the ability of those in the next generation to move up the economic ladder compared to their parents.
Your attitude is far more important than your race, gender, or social class in determining what you will accomplish in life. When I hear young blacks, or anyone for that matter, talk about systemic racism, I don't know whether to laugh or cry. I want to laugh because it's such nonsense. I want to cry because I know it's pushing untold numbers of young blacks into a dead end of self-pity and despair.
Bruh, I am so sick of people calling black people blacks. It don't sound right. You might as well just call us Negroes or niggers. It's the same thing when said by these people. Having a black face say that doesn't make it any better. Also, that's not true on the virtue of being white. That's a leg up for people compared to POC. Like, we can look at employment data. If your name is ethnic, they throw that ish out. Or because you are black, you are seen as more guilty. Things like that affect people greatly. So saying that your attitude is some survivorship bias bullshit. They did have sources for this video, and damn, They were a waste of time. Their sources were essentially from other conservatives and opinion articles.
Instead of seizing the amazing opportunities America offers them, they seize an excuse to explain why they're not succeeding.
So I'm gonna be real with you, man. America doesn't even want niggas to succeed unless they entertain white folk, be ratchet, or they throw their blackness away in the name of America. Fuck is she on about? People have legitimate reasons for why they are not succeeding, and for many, racism is a reason. Don't gaslight them by saying there are excuses.
I was born into a world where systemic racism was real. No fooling, outright bigotry, back of the bus real. But here's what you need to know. Yes, that racism shaped the Black experience, but even then, it did not define it. Change was in the air. Call it systemic reform. The modern civil rights movement was in its infancy, and the leaders who fought for equal rights for Blacks were men and women of all races. They believed in America and were determined to see it live up to its highest ideals manifest in the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution.
What do you mean was? That shit ain't never stopped. So I know conservatives eat this shit up, but god damn is she dishonest. The only true thing she said here was racism shaped the Black community, but even then, it did not define it. And even then, she says that part for some white supremacist light bullshit. What the fuck is systemic reform? They barely did much to fix the issue. They just said, hey, don't be openly racist. God damn, she even whitewashes the civil rights movement. I'm gonna be real. Those two pieces of paper are important in this country. But remember, that issue was written by landowning white men and had people like me, worth 3/5 of a person. Those pieces of paper are not what made people want better for this country. It was the people themselves. I don't think she notices or even cares, but American ideals are based on white supremacy. And that's something most people were fighting against during the civil rights movement.
Did I know growing up that George Washington and Thomas Jefferson owned slaves? I don't think I ever thought about it. If I did, I'd like to think that I would have had enough common sense to know that we can't judge men who lived 250 years ago by the moral standards of our own day.
With conservatives, common sense is not common sense. Also, they had morals back then too. People knew slavery was wrong. They didn't actually care to abolish it because they were white supremacists and it was something they thought would die off naturally. It didn't. It just didn't though. They had to have a whole ass war. These people dead ass wrote all men are created equal while they had slaves. And Thomas Jefferson was a rapist and a racist. It does not matter what time period you're in. You're a terrible person for that.
But I know that Jefferson wrote the words in the Declaration of Independence that made slavery ultimately impossible, that all men are created equal. And I know that Washington, Hamilton, Franklin, and Adams and the rest of the founders risked everything to make my world, my America, possible.
Ultimately impossible? Slavery is still around today. They just have it in a different name. They changed it to something else entirely, like the prison system, which disproportionately affects Black people, as it always has. It wasn't your world. It wasn't your America either. It was one of white supremacists and capitalists. You're educated as fuck, and you're really sitting there lying about what the founders intended. They did not have you in mind for anything, other than for someone to possibly rape or enslave, and since you keep mentioning Thomas Jefferson, most likely both.
How could I not be grateful for that and for the sacrifices so many others have made to preserve it? The truth is, I cannot remember a time when I did not love America and feel pride in the belief that I live in the greatest country in the world. I knew if I diligently pursued my ambitions, I could leave the poverty of my early years with all its abuse and depression behind me.
I deadass don't know how to respond to this.
I was fortunate in another way. I was spared the life-sapping, negative messages about America that are crippling a generation of young people. These ideas are poison. White privilege, whiteness as a form of property, unconscious racism, reparations, microaggressions, police have it out for Blacks, that the United States was created to protect and promote slavery. These are the ideas young people are told they must accept.
how old is this lady again? Okay, so she's 67. She was old enough to experience and witness the civil rights movement. I'm sorry, it's just that what she said was so fucking stupid, it's hard to think. People have been saying America is bad for a long time, especially regarding equality and rights. This country has literally crippled generations of people of color and black people, and we are still feeling its effects today. They really don't understand that you have to address the issue to fix the problem, but she's a conservative. They see no problem with white supremacy, white privilege, systemic racism, normalized toxic masculinity, anti-intellectualism, and bigotry. What truly is poison is how we have an irrefutable data to prove these things, like privilege, whiteness, unconscious racism, etc., are real. But they still deny it to preserve the feelings of fragile, mostly white conservatives.
And then they're told to reject the ideas that can save them, the antidote, the success principles that enabled me and millions of other Americans to escape lies of poverty. These principles aren't complicated. Work hard, learn from your mistakes, take personal responsibility for your actions.
I see these, right? And it amazes me that these people have a shallow opinion of black people. It doesn't surprise me though. This is essentially her saying, stop blaming the white man, take responsibility for yourself, and lift yourself by the bootstraps. It's also implying that millions of black youths in academia are being brainwashed into being victims because they learn, non-whitewashed history and recognize inequality and injustice. Note how when it comes to fixing whole groups of people struggle, conservatives can only say, you person do better, and be okay with all the bad isms and phobias.
I made the decisions to get my high school equivalency, attend a community college, and then earn 4 additional college and university degrees. I believed that my education would open doors, and it did. It was only when exposed to academic theories of oppression in graduate school that I was informed that because I was black, poor, and female, I could never do what I had already accomplished. Thank God it was too late for these toxic messages to stop me. Don't let them stop you. I'm Carol Swain, host of Be the People podcast and retired professor of political science and law at Vanderbilt University for Prager University.
Oh my fucking God. It's not that you could never do it. It's that the barrier to entry would be a lot harder considering you are a poor black woman. She's a literal doctor, and yet she has to lie about academia to make a bad point. It took 5 minutes of half-truths and generic background music to get to that point. If she wanted to tell the truth about racism, to explain what it actually is. Instead, she says racism isn't bad, just work hard. Racism was reformed in the 60s, even though we know it fucking wasn't. And now the ones bringing it up are the left, who like to indoctrinate people to believe they are victims, and surprise but not really a surprise, academia is bad. Good for her for making something out of her life despite growing up poor and all that jazz. It's sad though, that she grew up to be another white supremacist apologist repeating conservative talking points that literally do not help most communities or people at all. This was nothing but propaganda, and the only thing I really have to add is that conservatism is a fucking cancer. This has been BreadPilled Black here with PragerUghh. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content, and have a good one. Peace.